What is up, everyone? Obviously, if you're watching it, you watch the Detroit Lions lose to the Kansas City Chiefs 30-17, and I can sit here and tell you, like, look, um, it kind of played out the way I thought it was going to play out. If you listen to the podcast, um, God, what was it, Thursday, Friday? I said the same thing. The Lions were going to have to score points to win this football game. No matter how you slice it, no matter what you say, they were gonna have to score points. Dan Campbell said a race is 30. I also said a race is 30. And the reason I said a race is 30 because you're gonna have to score with your defense depleted. Like you got cornerbacks, Avante Maddox was out today. We didn't know the status of Brian Branch or Kirby Joseph coming into this game until the inactives were released. Um, DJ Reed's out, Arnold's out, Rakestraw was out before. So you're at the mercy of not having enough cornerbacks. And with NFL rules and how you were going to be able to structure it and call up people from the practice squad, you're kind of in this limbo of how we're going to do things. So it was always a race of 30. It just was. And the Lions did not win that race of 30, obviously, because they lost 30-17. And I think the most surprising thing that I'm disappointed with the Detroit Lions. Like I can't be disappointed with the defense because we knew coming into this game the Detroit Lions were going to have to score points to win. It's kind of similar to the way the Detroit Lions played against the Commanders. Like you came into that playoff game and you said Detroit's going to have to score points to win this football game. They just are. And you make a mistake here, a St. Brown drop. You make a mistake here with the illegal motion. However you spell it, they didn't play good enough to win this football game tonight. And we came into this game today, and Jared Goff against the blitz, he was spectacular. Like there's no one better than Jared Goff against the blitz. But when you look at the statistics and all how it breaks down, the Lions did a good job at targeting the linebackers for the Chiefs, because that was one of the reasons that's one of the emphasis I put on beating the Chiefs. You were gonna have to play them and throw at their linebackers. Nick Bolton was a liability in coverage. Some of their, Trent McDuffie is one of their better corners. So you were gonna have to do that, and they couldn't do it. Laporta got open enough. Jameer Gibbs didn't get spaced out enough into like traffic. I don't know what the hell they were doing today, but they got some things going, but they just couldn't ever put it into points. So it really doesn't really matter. And regarding the whole post game scuffle or whatever the hell it was, Dan Campbell spoke about it in the post game, and he says this, and I'll put it from here. Jeremy Reisman had it on Twitter, but he said, "I love Brian Branch, but that's what he did was inexcusable. It's not going to be accepted here. It's not what we do. It's not what we are about. I apologize to Coach Andy Reid and the Chiefs and Schuster. That's not okay. That's not what we do here, and it's not going to be okay. He knows it. Our team knows it, and that's not what we do." And that's all you could say about that. I mean, there is a possibility for Brian Branch that he could be suspended because of this. And if he's going to get suspended because of this, that's rough, man. That's rough because you go into a game against Tampa Bay, you're going to need everyone. You are going to need everyone, and you're not going to have everyone. And you're going to have to score points in that game. But if you lose Brian Branch going into that game because of a self-inflicted wound, that's terrible. That's just terrible. And that's not how you play the game. And now it's going to cost you another game potentially. So that's kind of what I look at with there. So it just one thing after another it led in this game, and there's no if, ands, or buts when you look at the statistics of the game. Right here, where is it? 53 plays for the Detroit Lions, 62 plays for the Kansas City Chiefs, 297 yards for the Detroit Lions, 354 for the Kansas City Chiefs. identically 5.7 to 5.6 yards per play. Either team deserve to win on that metric alone. They had more passing yards, 243 to 199. They had more rushing yards, 111 to 98. Uh, First downs, 18 to 26 to 18. You were better on third down, but it didn't really matter. Detroit had 4 penalties. The Chiefs had 0 because one was declined, and then the time possession was basically even. But look, um, how do I want to say this? I came into this game, and there was one point of emphasis that I had, and it came into the first drive. They ran the ball down Kansas City's throat, right? Just ran it down their throat, and then it stopped. And then you look at the statistics right there. They didn't clear 100 rushing yards. This was a fundamental offensive gasp. I thought, as bad as the defense played, and a lot of people say that the defense played bad, understandable when you give up 30 points. But that's how it is when you play against a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, and you got to score points. So the one thing I said coming into this game was you had to run the football, because one thing we know about the Chiefs, they were one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL. I think they were like 21st, 22nd. It was terrible. They were allowing over 100 yards rushing per game. And for some odd reason, the Lions couldn't rush over 100 yards, which is shocking to me. But this game doesn't really, spell out disaster for the Lions. If you want to think about it in a realistic standpoint, when you think about this game, okay, and you think about last year, and you went 15-2, what did it get you? So what I'm trying to say is went 15-2 last year. You might not go 15-2 this year, but you still might have a chance for the number 1 seed. You still might have a chance for, doing this and doing that. It's going to be interesting, but I just thought the Lions didn't play well enough to win this football game, regardless of the refs, regardless of the crappy calls. We came into this game, and I told you on this podcast, I said, look, you're not going to get the benefit of calls. It's just not going to happen. It's the Chiefs are going to get the benefit of calls. That's the way it goes. When you go to Arrowhead, you kind of understand that. You're playing a Chiefs team that is backs against the wall, man. Like, they can't go 2-4. They really can't go 2-4. And this was part of the reason. So this isn't an end all be all. This isn't like a sign that, the Lions are going to fall back to earth, or, they're going to collapse or something like that. It's just the reality of the situation that when you think about this team and you think about the moment that they were in tonight, they had to play a hell of a lot better than they played, and they didn't. And that's why they're going home with the loss. And it just, no matter how you slice it, no matter what you say, it was a ref or this or that. It could have been negated if you scored more than 17 points. You got beat by 13 points. So, there was chances and opportunities. I mean, when have you seen St. Brown drop a pass? When have you seen the Lions rush under 100 yards? You don't usually see that. So this was not a good game for the Detroit Lions. I don't think it's going to spell out as a good game if we look at the Pro Football Focus metrics tomorrow. It's just not. So this is a loss that the Lions probably needed, to be honest, because you always come back after a loss. Like, anytime if you played sports at any level, you come back after a loss and you say, what do I need to do to get better? What do I need to do to get better? And I thought this was a prime example of what they have to do to get better. And they were missing people, man. Like I said earlier in the podcast, missing Reed, Decker, Manu. I mean, it's just total like loss. And unlike last year, you're gonna get these players back. But you gotta swim. You gotta tread water until these guys come back. And the defense did. a pretty good job if you really want the realistic standpoint. They weren't going to hold the Chiefs to 7 points. They weren't going to hold the Chiefs under 13 points, but they did what they did. But you do not expect your offense to come out here and score 17 points. I mean, I don't think that anybody here that's a Lions fan would be happy with 17 points. This is just not the way this team is built. And I don't think you came in this game thinking that they were going to only rush for 98 yards. Like I don't know. I don't know how else to say it. They rushed for 98 yards, and that's a glimpse into what they did in this game. But look, we came in this game. We talked about it on the podcast over and over again. There was chances for you to win this game, and you just did not do it. So it is what it is. When we look at the box score of this game, because when we look at the box score of this game, um, you know, Goff was pretty good. He was 23 for 29, 2 touchdowns, sacked once. His quarterback rating was 118. Jahmyr Gibbs, 17 carries, 65 yards, no touchdowns. No touchdowns from Montgomery for 4 for 24. It is what it is. Jameson Williams, 6 receptions, 66 yards, 1 touchdown, and a long of 22. Sam Laporta, 5 for 55. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 9 for 45, which is a wild stat right there. He had 10 targets and only got 45 yards. Insane. But it shows that Trent McDuffie did a damn good job. Jahmyr Gibbs had 1 reception that for 0 yards. Just it goes to show you that this was not their best game by any stretch of imagination. You know, I look at the QB hits. They only had 3 QB hits the whole game. They had 3 sacks, but one was late by Al-Qadim Muhammad. But defense did a pretty good job, man, when you think about it, because you look at the team's stats and you think about yards per rush. I mean, Detroit averaged more yards per rush, but only got 93 yards, 98 yards. The key here is, I mean, the key, you really want the key. The key is the Chiefs got in the red zone 6 times and they converted 4 times. Detroit got in the red zone twice and converted 1 time. Like, you're not going to win football games like that. So it sucks, but this is a game that you could sit here, and I think that the best thing for Detroit is to sit here and eat it. And we come back to Detroit and playing Tampa Bay, who's on a heater, and they're playing absolutely. Baker's playing out of his mind. There is no easy game up on the schedule no more. I mean, you look at after the bye, Minnesota, Washington. You got the Eagles. Let me flash that schedule up here. You got a hard schedule coming up. Like, you got the Bucks in here, Vikings, the Commanders, the Eagles, the Giants, and the Packers. And I know people are scoffing over the Giants, but look what they're able to do. So Dan Campbell has his work in front of him. This team has their work in front of them. I'm glad that they got hit in the mouth. I like the way that they respond after a loss. They haven't lost back-to-back games in eons. So you know that they're going to respond. And I'm not going to sit here and act like this is a big deal, but this is what we came into this game thinking. It was going to be a tough game. And if you didn't play well, the Chiefs were going to win. And if you did play well, you're going to give yourself a good chance to win. So that is that. And defensively, I thought the defense played fine. They really did. I mean, the Lions did that 4th down where they gave them a short field. It just, they turned the ball over at the Kansas City 44. Which resulted in a Kansas City touchdown. They had that one punt. They had that one play for 3 plays, 8 yards before the half, that went back to the Chiefs. It was end of half, but it was a 2-for-1 situation. I mean, the Chiefs had the ball out of the half. So you had to get points there. Whether it was a field goal, whether it was a touchdown, you had to get points there, and you didn't. So that's that right there. Let's get to some comments on the page. You don't run the ball up the middle 3 times in a row when you have a running back with that kind of speed. I don't know what you are referring to, David, but just kind of give it to me for that. Plus, David says, why don't you try to get Gibbs on the outside, pitch the ball outside him? Well, here's the thing. I think a lot of people, they always have this fantasy of, let me just pitch to Gibbs on the outside. There are a lot of things that go into play with Gibbs going to the outside. Number one, if you pitch it outside, which side are you going to go to routinely? You're going to go to the side of Sewell. So if I was a defensive coordinator and you were pitching the ball to the outside of Sewell every time, I'm going to overload the box on that side. And then when you try to go the other way, like you got Dan Skipper and Christian Mahogany blocking, like, does it really give you a chance to succeed? So you have to go up the middle a majority of the time, because that's the strong point of your line. But Chris Jones being in the middle, I mean, I don't know why they were attacking that the most, but yeah, they should have had more screens outside. Like I said, Jameer Gibbs only had 1 reception. I came into the game talking about Gibbs, and if you got him out against a linebacker, it'd be a mismatch, because we talked about it on the podcast. Nick Bolton is a liability in coverage. He just is. He's given 80% of his passes. And when Sam Laporta was on him, it showed exactly what he was doing. Sam Laporta made him look silly. So I didn't get why they weren't attacking the linebackers. Didn't make much sense to me, but it is what it is. They just didn't play a good offensive game. That's all it comes down to. James says, what about the illegal motion penalty that has to be called at the time of snap? That's a live ball. Here, okay, the legal motion penalty, I feel like that's the most talked about penalty, and I don't understand. Like, I've watched a lot of football, cover a lot of football with this team. I've watched a lot of football. But when you talk about, not only did it come like 10 minutes after the play, like, that's supposed to be like thrown like right away. So they went back and they said they were discussing it because they were thinking it wasn't, they didn't know what the hell they were doing. I think they called it. And there's people that have these assumptions or opinions. Like, I read one ref that says you can't call it a legal motion. And then, you got Terry McCauley on the broadcast saying, oh, that's a legal motion. Like, what is it? Like, I just felt like that was stupid. And then the one play that I was a little bit upset about was the Travis Kelce play, where he caught the ball, it hit the ground, but I thought that was a play that you should have been able to challenge or something like that. But they got the line quick, and then it ended up being a Lions penalty. But I thought the Lions were very outside of those 2 plays. I thought the Lions were very undisciplined. That Hodge play that he had on Mahomes, he knows better. He knows better. When you're going against a guy like Mahomes, there's only a couple quarterbacks in the league that you go against, and you think, okay, if I hit him after the play, at any point, it's going to be a foul. Like, they're going to call it, no matter how it goes. So I thought that was just a bad decision on his part. I thought there were several bad decisions, and then it was multiplied by Brian Branch doing what he did after the game. Like, look, Brian Branch is a great player, but what he did after the game was just stupid, stupid. Because now we're going to go into Tampa Bay. There's a possibility, if you go on some people's pages like Florio or anybody who talks football that is a credible mind, there's a possibility he can get suspended for this because he is a multiple time offender. And I think that alone is just sheer incompetence by Brian Branch. Like he has to do a better job of maintaining his emotions. And this isn't the first time he's done this, but it hasn't cost him a suspension. And with the Lions having all the issues they have in the secondary, they can't afford to miss a guy like Brian Branch. They really can't, especially with the Buccaneers coming up. And we don't know the health status of Mike Evans, but that Abuka kid, he got hurt today, so that could be interesting. But the Buccaneers always give us a hell of a game. So we better be on our game. And if Brian Branch can't play, that's a huge loss. No way to sugarcoat that. Um, hmm, some people. But yeah, this game today was um not uh just wasn't a good game for the Detroit Lions. That's my opinion. Like Dan Campbell said, I heard him say it in the post game. I agree with him 100%. I told you before the game with the podcast I had on Thursday. Um, you got to score 30 points. You got to score 27. You got to score 28. You got to outscore teams. It was kind of like a version of last year where you had to outscore teams to win, and you weren't able to do that. So that is what that is that. So let me see if there's anything to come out. Brian Branch responded. He says, I did a childish thing. I'm tired of people doing stuff between the play and the refs didn't catch it. They're trying to bully me out there and I don't. I shouldn't have did it. It was childish. So Brian Branch responds to oh my god. Brian Branch responds to the whole thing with saying that it was because of things that happened in the play. Um, so it is what it is. Um, where is it? Yeah, Brian Branch said it was from a Freep article. I did a childish thing, but I'm tired of people doing stuff in between the play and refs didn't catch it. They're trying to bully me out there and I shouldn't have done it. It was childish. So basically he's saying it was what he did it. It was childish. Yes, it was childish. It was extremely childish. But it is what it is. Now it's up to the league. Like that's just the reality. So that's the way I look at it with that. Going over something that I was trying to say something in terms of what I thought before the game. So when we went back to the Friday on Thursday when I did the podcast, um, there was one thing I talked about on the podcast that I wanted to hit on. So I knew coming into this game that you should have known that they were going to attack our linebackers. So I'll put this Twitter post up that is from Next Gen Stats. Let me put it up. All right, there you go. So this stat says here Patrick Mahomes took advantage of the Lions linebackers in coverage, completing 13 of 17 attempts for 165 yards and a TD targeting linebackers in coverage. The Chiefs offense used 11 personnel on a season low 33.9% of plays, which kept the Lions in base defense. So it's interesting for a lot of things. But I thought that was a huge thing that we were talking about before the game. Um, it's I don't know how you say it. We knew that they were going to attack the Lions linebackers coverage. I didn't think they were going to do screens because, like I said in the podcast, the Lions were one of the best tackling teams in the NFL per Pro Football Focus. I think they were number 1 or number 2. But when you look at it from this standpoint, this showed you exactly what their other teams are going to try to emulate. When you talk about what are they going to emulate, they're going to emulate trying to go at you, at your linebackers. And I felt for a couple weeks that was one of the things that could be a problem. Jack Campbell getting targeting coverage has been an issue. I think he's given 80% of his passes against. Let me pull that up real quick. But this was going to be an issue. Let me pull this up real quick. Man. But that's exactly what I thought. So here's the statistics on it, on coverage. Okay, so reception percentage against the highest on the team are Jack Campbell, Derek Barnes, and Alex Anzalone has actually been pretty good in coverage. He's given 50%. But Jack Campbell has been targeted 25 times. He has given up 22 passes for 143 yards, 112 yards after the catch. There's been no touchdowns on that. So there you go. I mean, there's going to be teams that are going to take that step to go after Jack Campbell in coverage. So that's one of them. Derek Barnes is another one, but Derek Barnes, he's been targeted. Or is it only 6 times, but he's given 6.7% of passes. So that is what it is. Next, let's see what we got here. I'm trying to. This is all live, so here's what we got to do. Here's a video from Colton Pouncey about Brian Branch. I'll pull it up for you. This is probably the best one because I was looking at a blurb from the Freep. This is probably the better one to go with, so I'll play that right now.
I did a little childish thing, but I'm tired of people doing stuff in between play and refs don't catch it. Like, they be trying to bully me out there. I don't really think should have never did it. It was childish.
How do you process the way it went down for you guys tonight? Just having a winning streak snapped and coming in here against a tough opponent.
We beat ourselves, honestly.
What happened between the play? What are you referring to?
I got blocked in the back illegally, and they was running the ref. The ref didn't do anything, and just stuff like that. And I could have got hurt off of that, but I still shouldn't have done that. So
That was at the end of the game. You're talking about somebody hit you in the back?
Yeah.
Juju hit you in the back?
yes,
So Juju in particular was the one that hit you? Or
Yes.
Yeah. Was there other things that they were doing just in terms of maybe rubbing it in at the end?
yeah, there was a lot of stuff, but I should have showed it between the whistle, not after the game, and I apologize for that.
What sort of disappointing that do you expect? Or you gotta hope it's not?
I don't know. Honestly.
All right, so that's that. So basically, Brian Branch says it was childish of what he did. Agreed wholeheartedly. When I look at some of the statistics and some of the people, the comments and all that jazz, we come into this game, like I said, we came into this game thinking about a couple of things: the race to 30, all that jazz, and for some odd reason, Lions couldn't score. So it is what it is. But I was more impressed with the way that the Lions defense played, not totality, but they played pretty well enough to win the football game. If the Lions just scored more on offense, that's where it comes down to. So that's what it is right there. I did want to hit on this statistic. So I was talking about certain statistics that really do matter. In the post game podcast, it's always jumbled up because there's always so many things that are going on. And I'm trying to read stuff. I don't have a full podcast management. Like I'm just doing it by myself. That's what I do. But there was one thing I wanted to hit on. So the Lions sacked Patrick Mahomes for three sacks for 14 yards. The completions, they didn't give him many yards per pass, 7.4 to 6.6, which is still a lot. But both these defenses, it seemed like this was you had to make your mark. And I look at these statistics, and they're variably similar to each other. So it's pretty good there. It's an interesting thing. Jared Goff said on he and many coaches have never heard of the rule that nullified his TD catch. He was under the impression that he would be fine as long as he didn't put his hands under the center. I never heard of that, said Jared Goff, because of how close I was to the center that declares I'm the quarterback. If that is the rule, I guess we need to do a little better research. So it's shocking to me. It really is. I don't know what, someone earlier talked about the penalty. Where is it? It was James. So James talked about the penalty. So this is Jared Goff, and he says that he's never heard of this. I mean, coming into this game, I knew that you were going to have the refs were going to be a little bit of they were going to play a little bit of a role. I didn't think they played this big of a role. And I'm not saying they played a big role, but I mean, you have a quarterback who's been a quarterback for what? Pretty much a lot of years. I don't know how many, 8, 7, 9, whatever. And he's never heard of the rule. And it's because of how close he was to the center. So, if I'm remembering right, there was a play in the Eagles game that they played Kansas City, ironically similar. And Jalen Hurts went in motion, and Saquon Barkley took the snap. So if Saquon Barkley threw the pass to Jalen Hurts, it'd be an illegal motion. But wouldn't it be an illegal motion if he just goes in motion? I don't know. Some of the stuff that happens in these NFL games is just banana lands, and especially when it happens in Kansas City, it's banana lands. There is also a stat from NFL Ref Stats. He says, while 0 accepted penalties is extremely unusual, it's not unprecedented for the Chiefs. Detroit KC marks the third time in the Patrick Mahomes era that KC has recorded 0 penalties in a game. Previous 2 occasions was 2019 versus the Raiders and 2022 versus the Jaguars. Both games were at Arrowhead. And referee Craig Wallstead, who was the ref today, has never called 0 accepted penalties on any team in any of his careers prior to Sunday Night Football at Kansas City. Lions at Chiefs is the first time in 200 games officiated that has happened with Wallstead in charge. So that's insane. That's when you hear a stat like that the chief guy who was the chief of the crew, Craig Rolstead, has never called 0 accepted penalties on a team in any game throughout his career prior to Sunday Football. Tell you what, some of these statistics are coming out that are just they're not good. So it is. And then, obviously Patrick Mahomes had something to say about this. He says they could do all the extracurricular stuff they want to do. But we play the games in between the whistles. It's a pretty funny one. But even the national media is having fun at the whole 0 penalties thing, because it's very unusual to see that happen in an NFL football game. I mean, I personally remember some of the plays that happened against the Lions, and they should have been penalties. Like there was a hold that should have been called, but it never got called. So it is what it is. The Lions didn't play good, but this whole zero penalties thing is actually legitimately hilarious, to be honest. Um, Lions versus refs. Kels dropped that pass. See, that was something that I said. Um, I really did think that was a pass that should have been called. It was a horrible in my opinion of what they were able. It should not. It should have been reviewed, but they went up and somehow they rushed to the line. It led to a Lions penalty, and then it was off. And so you can't challenge after that. So good on their part, but I thought that. But didn't you hear Terry McCauley say that would have been a completed pass? I don't understand how that's a completed pass, but some of the passes in the NFL aren't completable. So that is it too. Um, it was a wild game. Sky High says just got to refocus on the Bucks, tough loss, and move to on 1-0 next week. And that's how you got to take it right there. Um, however this game ended, the way it ended, it was a dud of a game for the Lions. I think go back to the Packers game, that was a dud of the game for the Detroit Lions. You go back to some of these games that they've had over the course of Dan Campbell's tenure, they have had duds of a game. But I thought this today was just a game that they should have won. They should have won. But they could not move the ball at a consistent pace. And say what you want about the Kansas City Chiefs, they needed this game more than anybody. They needed this game more than anybody. They needed every bit of this game because if you look at the standings of where they stand compared to the rest of their division, I mean, you have in the AFC West, you have the Chargers at 4-2, the Broncos at 4-2, the Kansas City Chiefs at 3-3, which are third in the division, and the Vegas Raiders are 2-4. So this was a huge game for the Kansas City Chiefs. It just was, and they could not lose this game to save their life because they've already lost. Let's see what they lost in conference. The Kansas City Chiefs are 1-2. So there are some games that they played. They lost to the Chargers. They lost to the Jaguars. They're at a huge point in their season where they're gonna have to start making up games, and this was the game that they had to make up. They're 3-3. They're 500, and they're gonna give their best foot forward. 191 Pogo says the ref thing bothers me. Lions beat themselves. 13-point loss isn't the refs. If the refs were in for the Chiefs, they'd be 6-0. Would the Chiefs be okay with losing to the Chargers and Eagles if it's rigged? No. See, I agree with you, but I was just bringing up a statistic that one of the reffing accounts that I follow, they posted it, and I don't think the refs had anything to do with it. To be honest, the Detroit Lions just did not play good enough to win the football game. That's where it comes down to. And however you slice it, it just wasn't a good game for the Lions. And I go back to the statistics of they only had 98 rushing yards. They had 18 first downs. The Chiefs had 26. But the major sticking point in all of this was they had 6 red zone opportunities. They got 4 of them. You had 2 red zone opportunities. You got 1 of them. If you only get in the red zone twice throughout the whole game, you're asking to lose that game. It just is what it is. So, the Lions came in this game today, the highest scoring offense in the entire NFL. You expect them to play a better game. You expect them to score more than 17 points, especially when the defense is so beat up. But they just could not do that. So it is what it is. We move on. Buccaneers next week. We'll talk about it more on the Detroit Lions News podcast. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. We will see you in the next podcast. We talk more Detroit Lions football. but I'll hit this comment. When anyone Pogo says that's fair, I just think reffing across the entire NFL is inconsistent and bad. Well, I'll hit on this before I jump out. But you're right. And I want to hit on this because if you look at the NFL, right, they're the only league in professional sports that doesn't have full-time referees. Like you could literally track where these guys have full-time employment. They're not full-time refs. And I feel like sometimes it really shows its ass. But there's sometimes you watch an NFL game and they don't get nothing right, man. They don't get nothing right. And there's sometimes where it's like a great the officiating is really good, right? It's really good across the board. And then you get games where like they're calling penalties for holding every play. You get you get calls for roughing the passer. It's not really roughing the passer. I think the NFL refs are terrible in conjunction. I think the NBA refs are bad as well. I know that they're going to robot umps for Major League Baseball, but I think the best refs are in the NHL. That's by far, and that's because those guys are actually like full-time employees. So, you think with all the money that the NFL makes in the NFL, some of these refs would be more studied up on the rules. I feel like some of the times that you see these refs, right? They don't know the rules. Like there's sometimes they don't know the rules, and even the people that they have in a booth, like Terry McCauley or whatever Dean Blandino or whatever refs in the Fox booth or NBC or CBS, even they sometimes are like, I don't know. It's like, well, then we have an issue. But the issue here is, and it's always been the issue with the NFL is they're having an issue recruiting refs. That's number one, and you hear it across like the NFL because some are staying in college. But this has been an issue forever, and the NFL is going to have to address it at some point. Now, what is it going to take for them to have to address this? We'll see what happens. But reffing across the board is just ass. It truly is ass. But we'll see you guys in the next podcast. We talk more Detroit Lions football here on the Detroit Lions News Podcast. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.